Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we're looking at a pretty big Thursday night slate here, Nate. Big for a Thursday night anyway. In this one, we are taking a look at the two LA teams in La La Land. Clippers taking on the Lakers. Probably no LeBron James in this one, we can be sure. But we got plenty of stuff to talk about in here. Nate does have his article up on playpicks.com with some best bets and player props in there for you as well. And do like and subscribe to that page. We've got a couple other videos for you today. Let's get back on track with those player props, as we had a pretty rough night last night, but still staying hot as of late. So look to continue those streaks. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to ftpicks.com or dkpicks.com and find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, six games here on Thursday, and there are some intriguing matchups. We're going to have to watch the injury news, though, for a couple, including whether Trae Young plays. The Hawks are plus 4.5 at home against the Suns. We will break down that game with some scenarios based on Trae's status. You got Wolves -7 at the Pistons. That totals all the way up to 229. DeMar DeRozan and the Bulls +3 at the Raptors, who are playing 5 games in a 7-night stretch here. The Heat are -4.5 at the Spurs. The Kings +13 at the Warriors after beating the Nets last night. And the Lakers and Clippers tangle at Crypto Arena, now called. Right now, Clippers are -3.5. They've won 4 straight against the Lakers and covered in 7 of the last 8. And that total is all the way up to 220 right now. And that's where I'm focusing. I'm focusing on an under here. I think you can exploit the fact that the Clippers look like they're suddenly a high-scoring, fast-paced team, but I think it's more about the competition and the situation where they've been on the East Coast, playing the Pacers twice. They've played the Wizards, the Hornets, teams that love to push it up and down, even the Heat that are pushing it right now. And the Lakers are actually trending the other direction. Since getting Anthony Davis back and then losing LeBron James, it's now an Anthony Davis team, which means the pace is actually up, but the offensive rating is way down without LeBron. And the points per game drops 4 points here. The offensive rating actually 7.5 points worse per 100 possessions with AD in the lineup, which is very strange, and then just, shows to a lack of rhythm, really, because he just hasn't played much this year, and they have so many new guys in general. This was the concern in the offseason when you bring in 11 new players, and a lot of them are old veterans that are not used to this role. So really what I have most confidence in here is not having confidence in either team offensively. The Clippers, I think, are still a bad offense. They've gotten a lot out of guys like Amir Coffey and Terrence Mann on this road trip, but they are not reliable scorers. If you can guard the three-point line and the paint, which they should be able to with Anthony Davis and Dwight Howard playing good minutes, then I don't see how the Clippers are going to get their consistent points. I mean, they average 106 at home. Their team total is 110.5 tonight. I would go under there. But I mean, I think the overall under, usually we like taking one team total, but I think you can count on the struggles of both teams here. With the Lakers on a back-to-back, the Clippers guard the three-point line well, and the Lakers in 4 games with Anthony Davis back have gone way under in 3 of those, mostly because of their offensive struggles. The exception was when Malik Monk went off for 8 threes and 44 points in a shootout with the Hawks. I don't see that happening tonight. The Clippers are 7-0 to the under when they have at least 2 days rest, and they've been off since Monday. They're 6-2 to the under against Pacific Division foes, and 17-9 to the under following a loss. So I think the added time to prepare for this game, which is always important for the Clippers in that same building, will give Tyronn Lue some time to install better defensive sets and find ways to contain a Lakers team that's going to be tired after grinding out a slow-paced win to the Blazers. And that's another thing, is that the Blazers do not score in the paint. They score the lowest percentage in the West in the paint. Clippers are 4th lowest. And if the Lakers just held the Blazers to 94 points, I think we can also expect a decently good defensive performance here to keep this game under.
Yeah, no, 100%. I would agree with you. I think, your point about the Portland game last night with LA is spot on in terms of that total going, 193 or so. And you mentioned, Portland not being able to score down low. Neither can the Clippers. Zubac is questionable right now for tonight's game. Not that I really am super worried about how he's going to impact it, to be honest. As right now, once you get that Anthony Davis led team, like you mentioned, there's a bit more of that playing in the paint, playing a little bit more, at least on defense, packing that in a little bit. There's not really much on the wing in terms of defense for LA, as we know. But it's a lot different when you have Anthony Davis standing down there rather than nobody, or occasional Dwight Howard minutes or what have you. So I think this is one where if LBJ was in this game, I would feel very comfortable taking the Lakers, as there's just nobody on the floor for the Clips right now. You mentioned Reggie Jackson doesn't really have historically good numbers against the Lakers, and someone that they need to come up big. He's not even their leading scorer over their last. You mentioned those guys coming off the bench for the Clips. It's Amir Coffey leading them in their last 5, almost 20 points a game, leading them in minutes, shooting 49, 41, and 90 splits. So getting some good touches. He's only got the 6th highest usage rate on the team while still dropping the most amount of points. Guys like Brandon Boston and others are actually getting way more touches and shots up than him, but he's still the most efficient scorer and the leading scorer. So, you'd think he's going to get a bit more, but even if he does, he's shooting about 4 of his attempts or 5 of his attempts a game from 3. So there's still the need for this team to get closer to the basket outside of like Reggie Jackson and Mook, really. At this point, obviously, Luke Kennard has been doing his thing as well. Yeah, the Clips are playing at the fastest pace in their last 5, but you look at who they're playing teams that that don't really that play at that fast pace. The Pacers, we've mentioned, have been a couple of those games. The Wizards and the Hornets, and then the Heat have actually, and the Magic have actually upped their pace as well as of late. So teams that are really forcing the ball to go up and down a lot more. I don't think that the Lakers want to get into. To be honest, I do think the Lakers would like to get into a little bit more of that. You mentioned they're playing at that faster pace, but those inefficient numbers are just too much. I think they're way too reliant on LeBron James's passing this year, just as much as they are his scoring and setting things up. Guys like Malik Monk getting open mostly when LeBron's in the game. That became his favorite second target. He had that one outburst that you mentioned Monk did that led to that Lakers over recently. But other than that, yeah, it's a very stagnant offense that's getting a lot of its points differently than when they had LeBron, when they were trying to get up and down. They were getting, even if they weren't getting steals, they were getting the ball out of the basket after they got scored on and just going straight down the other way. And it's a lot different now, with the Clippers playing the way they're playing. I just don't like much from the Lakers in general. I'm a little bit scared to take the Clips just because Anthony Davis is now the best player on the court, dropping 30 plus last night against a similar team, a similarly built team, as you mentioned, the Blazers are to the Clippers. So you still feel like, well, okay, he's got an opportunity, but I do think that the Clippers are a team playing a little bit better now, with a little bit more, not necessarily at stake tonight, but plenty, to winning their last 4 against the Lakers isn't really, it's not much of a coincidence. It's a team that they bring it against, and I think that'll be the case tonight.
Yeah, and they brought it defensively in the last 2 meetings last spring, holding the Lakers to 94 and 86 points to go under there. I felt like the first meeting this year was going under until all of a sudden the Lakers coughed up a 15-point lead. Paul George hit a flurry of threes. That defense, though, credit to Kawhi. That offensive explosion, credit to Paul George. Clippers don't have either of those guys. I think you kind of hit it there. If Anthony Davis plays, and I don't know if you can 100% expect that on a back-to-back at this point, but if he plays, he's going to be motivated to try to carry his team for sure, to show that he is still a superstar, because we haven't really seen that this season. And I would actually lean towards the Lakers. And if because of the value on the money line there with plus odds, or if you can tease it up to plus 7.5, then you can get that under in a much more comfortable range. And if the Lakers win, or if they're playing it close, I don't think it's going to be a 120 game, in that range. You see on the back-to-back numbers, they're 2-4 this season straight up, but the and the points per game are similar, but the pace is slower. They're attempting more threes, depending on that, getting to the free throw line less. It's not going to necessarily pay off against a Clippers team that has so many athletes on the wing and can prevent you from getting threes. Does a good job of not fouling as well. So I just think that we're going to see a real scrappy game that should go under.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, I mean, AD is a bit of a question too. You want to make sure you stay on top of whether or not he's in the lineup tonight. Obviously, there's not much on him right now. And he has one prop up on DraftKings in terms of first basket scored, but that's a pretty common first prop bet put up by these, odds makers. So that doesn't necessarily indicate 100% that he's playing. You definitely want to stay on. It could be one of those surprising things where, 45 minutes before tip, we're finding out Anthony Davis doesn't play. I would bet the Lakers right now to assume that, if he does play, I'm getting that 3.5 points. And I do think that they can cover that and still keep that under, et cetera. But at the same time, the minute that I see Anthony Davis not playing tonight, I would feel pretty good about taking the Clips as I just, trust them a lot more without their stars right now than I do the Lakers. So that is all the time we have for this one. Bit of a conundrum here in La La Land tonight, but we do like a lack of points. So make sure you do try to hit that under and check out those other couple of videos we have for you today. A couple other ones, including that player props video we'll look to stay hot with you tonight. So until we see you next, happy betting.